WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American here in Germany. Today my guest is...
Serghios Florides.
Very good. From Irish Whiskey Magazine. Wow.
There you go.
So very good. So the first one I can
nice
say...
to be here.
Yes, Benjamin, I know him. Good, hello, good vibes. Very good. And Kevin, our Irishman, our Corkman down in Germany, also says, good evening, gentlemen. Tina, an Irish whiskey fan from Germany, is also there. Maybe you actually know her. She's in Ireland a lot and doing
Tina, I know. I see Tina more in Ireland than I see a lot of Irish people. So
very good.
She's a regular.
She is a regular. That's great. And of course, look, and she also says hi to Jason. Isn't that nice?
Ah, there you go.
So Christina says hello as well. That's great to see you. So we have a few viewers that are actually watching us at this time. Very, very good. So tell me a little bit, how did you have the great idea of starting a magazine for Irish whiskey?
Well, great idea has to be determined yet. But Irish whiskey is something that I was always around, even from a young boy, coming home and see my father have a drink, and he would have a Powers or a Jameson or Tullamore Dew, and that flavour stayed with me kind of growing up, and I kind of became interested in drinking and tasting whiskey more in my mid-30s or early 30s, I suppose. And before that, I would have had it with a Coke. I would have had it with some sort of mixer, and usually with ice. But the big thing about Irish whiskey for me wasn't so much. I was intrigued firstly by the color of it, and that was one of the things that I remember: the color and how its aroma would fill the room. And then, my uncles, they lived in London, and they drank Scotch. My dad lived here in Dublin, and he drank Irish. And I remember the rivalry constantly when they were growing up, and we were going over to visit. And so I suppose I really got interested in Irish whiskey. A lot of it would have been through talking to people that were interested themselves, by maybe going to the Celtic Whiskey Shop, which would have been the place to go at the time. I did my own research as well. I was interested in the historical side, and being a bit of a techie, I was kind of interested in the chemical side. So I have an engineering background, which has never really been put to use, but nonetheless, I was interested in the process of distillation and manufacture and maturation and so forth. And I was picking up a lot of information, and it was coming from all over the place, and actually it was quite difficult to pick up good information about Irish whiskey in Ireland. There were a couple of good references, but the best thing were the societies, the Celtic Whiskey Shop, and then some other bars where people would meet, and online forums. But a lot of those online forums were abroad. So, you Serge Valentine and so forth, they had great websites. And actually probably one of the best websites at the time would have been, there was one called Liquid Irish, which I don't think is maintained that much anymore, but it was maintained by and set up by David Haviland. Okay. And it was an incredible resource there on Irish whiskey, and kind of like slipped maybe in the last few years, but the rest was coming from abroad, and very much it would be the foreign perspective of what Irish whiskey is. And of course, what they're going to pick up a lot of the time is the marketing message that they give. So, you even pick it up any magazine, you'd be lucky if Irish whiskey had 2 or 3 columns in it. And 2 or 3 columns were basically essentially a press release.
Yeah, Jameson.
Yeah, well, Jameson would have been one of them. But
Howard, maybe the other, or maybe a Bushmills, and that was it.
Yeah, so you were very, very limited. You maybe had 2 or 3 brands, and you had their view of things. And look, their view of things was often correct. But to enable a customer's viewpoint, or a more unbiased viewpoint of how things developed, and what the real history is. There's an awful lot of myths, misconceptions about, we keep on talking about these misconceptions and mistruths about Irish whiskey. There are some, maybe not so many as are reported, because it's a very topical subject, so people like to embellish it somewhat. But yes, I mean, essentially I wanted to find the authentic stories that are behind Irish whiskey, and not some rehashed press release or somebody who's, the further you are away from something, the more difficult it is to report it accurately, really. So, it would be like me trying to make serious comments about American whiskey or Scotch when I'm not there. So anything I would hear would be secondhand. Where here I get the opportunity to go and speak to them. I get to speak to people who are real lovers of Irish whiskey, and all they want to do is see the presence of Irish whiskey reach the world and actually an authentic story about it. So the days of shamrocks and diddly eye and so forth are gone. Ireland has moved on and Irish whiskey's moved on. So I wanted to present Irish whiskey in the way it deserves to be presented, in a modern, authentic sense. Yes, with respect to the history, of course, tradition is a huge element of it. Representing the real tradition of what happened. So, sometimes historical facts get misconstrued and misreported. And again, I see it as our responsibility to some extent to provide our viewpoint. And of course, somebody else can challenge that viewpoint. I mean, that's good. So I'm all for somebody saying you're wrong or that's not the right viewpoint. But at least get a healthy discussion going. So,
all right.
And then the other things I picked up other magazines, and it was it was like picking up the yellow pages almost sometimes. It was quite boring. There's no reason why a whiskey magazine cannot be a piece of art. Why it can't be engaging to all the senses. It's just not. It's not just the knowledge that's there. It's like picking up a whiskey. It's not just the taste of the whiskey. It's everything around it. It's how it looks, how it smells, how oily it is, the history around it, the packaging. There's a whole thing that goes to make a tactile feel of what a whiskey is.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to do.
So I'm going to just share the screen here a little bit and just show the people here your Irish Whiskey Magazine site. That's, of course, www.irishwhiskeymagazine.com. So you always have a free digital issue at the moment. Very, very good. Thank you very much for that. You have the Irish Whiskey Association endorsement. And if we go to the subscription, you can see that it's €10 basically here for each magazine. And you're now at the issue number 9, which was a little bit more. It was almost €12. So you have 12 issues so far. It's 4 times a year, isn't it?
It's 4 times a year, or we try and keep to that as much as possible, but not always possible. I mean, we could be 8 times a year realistically, the amount that has been happening. But we're a small business, and our resources are somewhat limited, so we try and do the best with what we have. There's plenty of news, and often it's a human resource issue and a time and financial constraint that often is the bottleneck, not actually the quantity of news. So
where do you send most of your magazines? Are they in Ireland itself, or is it actually abroad?
So I mean, the majority, 30% of our magazines stay in Ireland at the moment. But that number is going down as the world numbers increase. So the States would be 40%, and actually Germany would be maybe 10 to 15%. I think it's around the 12%.
Yeah.
So Germany would be, outside of Ireland, would be our largest market, and then the UK.
Yeah. Wow. So Germany's ahead of the UK. Very good. I love that.
So, I mean, there are grounds for possibly looking at a German version at some point, but I think there's an element of high level English understanding in Germany, so it's not a barrier. Holland is up there, France is up there, Eastern Europe is getting there, and actually Scandinavian countries are picking up. So, but Germany is the majority in Europe, I would say.
Okay, very good. So if there are any questions here for our guest today or this evening, please just ask, put them in the comments, and we'll talk about those. Now, do you have a background in magazines? How did you have this moment of this, what are we going to do? Yeah. So our brand ambassador for Azentis Whiskey is here, single malt from Deadless Summer. So hi on you.
I recognize the name there. Yeah. I mean, no. The honest answer is no. And anybody in their right mind who did have some sort of magazine background would probably not have started.
Okay.
So, and I think obviously it makes things more difficult. But I do think it's given me a naivety that has actually been useful.
Yep.
So I'm not succumbed to have to, conform to certain practices or guidelines. And sometimes that works in my favor and sometimes it doesn't. But we make mistakes and we learn, and that's great. So we've got forgiving readers, which is great. But, we did actually sit down, and especially for this last issue, and prior to that, actually, we started a 6-month program at looking at what we wanted to achieve in the magazine aesthetically. And I think that was important that we come up with something a little bit, up until this version, I think we had huge creativity in the design, massive creativity. And I think we, almost to the point where sometimes the creativity distracts from the content,
Okay.
and that is a balance that you have to, reach. So you have to match the creativity with the content. I think that's important. And that comes from the photography, the graphic design, layout, typography, everything. But what we tried to do now in issue 9 is we tried to streamline that down and come up with something a little bit fresher, a little bit more reproducible, still fresh, a bit more space. And the important thing for us is that it's consistent on what our new website will be.
Okay.
So, you gave the website address earlier, so thank you. But I think that's a long way from where we will be when we release the new website. So
Okay.
we do have a lot of plans, and by the end of this month, we'll be up and live with that. So the idea is that there will be a synergy between what's in the magazine and what's in print, a tight link. So you look at the website and say, yes, I recognize the magazine. You look at and vice versa, but there will be kind of interaction between the two.
All
And
right.
I think that hasn't really been done as yet, I don't think, in the whiskey world and magazines.
Okay, so if I can try, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to try to share here your magazine from this month, at least the table of contents. We can see this online, right?
Yes, you can. You can see.
Very
So,
good.
in fact, what we've done is we've actually put up all our magazines online now.
Oh, I didn't know that. I only knew this one.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've given away issue 9 free.
Okay.
And that is, one is a thank you. Secondly, is to celebrate the new release and the new style. But also, we acknowledge that not everybody can get out to the shops, and postage is difficult and so forth. And people have other concerns at the moment. So, and they're far more pressing than any magazine would ever be. So, it's a thank you to our readers, and maybe open up new readers in the future. But so
Kevin just got his issue number 9 lately. Good job with the layout.
Yeah, I saw Kevin. Kevin was very nice to post comments, and and that's the one thing. Look, it's not going to be for everybody the new layout. We acknowledge that, but you're not going to please everybody. But I think good suggestions can help us develop it further and take it to a new level. So you're only as good as your last magazine, and that's very, very much true. So like I said, we have released them digitally. The plan was never necessarily to go into a digital format for the magazines. The tactility of a physical magazine, it can't really be replicated. But it's like a whiskey. I'm not going to tell somebody how to consume their whiskey, and I'm certainly not going to tell them how to consume their magazine. So, horses for horses. And actually, the funny thing is, and we've noticed it actually, is we thought it would be a generation thing where the younger crowd would like the digital version. And actually, we're actually finding the opposite.
Yeah.
So, I suppose maybe in the similar way that you see vinyl making a resurgence, print in specialist markets is on the increase.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, this Corona throws up a lot of spanners in the works.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah. So,
very good.
so we've offered the digital there for people that want it.
All right, so David asked the first question is basically now what we wanted to talk about anyway, so thank you very much. A question here, how does he see the future for Irish whiskey? With all these new distilleries open up, it's going to be too inevitable that a few could fall by the wayside, correct? Incorrect?
Absolutely, of course it's correct. But I mean, if I open 20 supermarkets in a country, not all 20 supermarkets are going to succeed. If there's 50 new magazines, they're not all going to succeed. 90% of magazines fail after a year.
Yeah.
Right. So to say that some are going to fail, yes, but let's be realistic and put it in a business sense first. 90% of businesses are going to fail. So that's the reality. The fact that we have a large number, we haven't seen the fruits of those yet. And actually, the truth is, what's happened this year is going to put some serious pressure on a lot of these distilleries. Who would have banked
Especially
on...
those that want to finance a lot of their distilleries through tourism at the beginning.
Absolutely. And the tourism figures, we looked at those tourism figures before and we thought they were a bit optimistic anyway. But saying that, they were close. In fact, they went over the million last year, which is incredible. So congrats to everybody that was involved in that. But saying that, it's killed the income of a lot of distilleries that would have banked on it, and it's a shame. I think the mistake a lot of new distilleries made was exaggerating how big that demand for visiting distilleries would be in the first place, but it's absolutely decimated now. So you will get a lot of pressure on a lot of distilleries, unfortunately.
Very good. Just going back real quick to Jeff's question here, will the digital subscription in the future be part of the print, or will it be separate?
Okay, so what we plan on doing is the following: is that people that have an existing, people that renew their existing subscription or have an existing subscription will get the opportunity to get the digital version either free or hugely subsidized. So we haven't worked out the mechanics and the economics of that yet. So we will have a bundle price, and the bundle price will be more than just the digital version and the print magazine. There's going to be more in it than that. There will be the option of just getting digital, there'll be the option of just getting the print, there'll be the option of taking individual issues from... so at the moment we've gone with issue as the mechanism for distributing our magazine. It's not our ultimate goal to be on that. Mm-hmm. So depending on how our development goes in actually offering a truly immersive digital experience, which doesn't pretend to be a magazine, that's our goal. So, I mean, digital is digital, print is print. So the notion of digital pretending to be a magazine, some people like it. So it works for some people. So we're going to give four options actually. So, but we'll announce those by the end of the month. There's a lot happening.
Okay, still there'll be access to the archives, right, with a subscription?
So if you take a digital subscription, you will have access to the full library when we do a digital subscription offer. At the moment, the only offer we have is to buy individual issues digitally, but when we offer the proper digital subscription, you will have access to the full catalog and more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's go back to the question here of the new distilleries of Ireland. I think at the moment we have 31 different distilleries producing spirit. Presently, maybe most of them are now making hand sanitizer, but a few weeks ago they were making actually spirit. Yeah. So let's talk about a lot of these now. Are there really too many, and do enough of those people have enough deep pockets to survive this very turbulent year of 2020?
Look, I think that there's 31, they wouldn't have been in full production, so they're not going to be too badly hit. I think there's about 16 that have visitor centers, 17. Mm-hmm. So half of them will be affected on that side. There will have to be something that gives in the meantime, but I think there are a lot of government initiatives. I'm hoping the IWA step in and lobby the government as well to
the Irish Whisky Association, for those that do not know.
Yeah, so the Irish Whisky Association is a lobbying group, essentially. It's not a government body as such, but it is one of the lobbying groups. Yeah. There's another group, Board Via, that could help. But any help that can be given to the distilleries at the moment is essential, because a lot of them will fall through the cracks if they don't get that support. And that could be deferred payments, it could be reducing on taxes on that, and it depends what way they see it. I mean, our government here has to really see the long-term view of these things, and sometimes it has kind of knee-jerk reaction to maybe do the opposite and increase taxes now to try and get itself out of a hole.
Okay.
What we need is relaxation on taxes and breaks on all these distilleries for at least a couple of years.
Yeah, very good.
And we'll see how long this lasts. But the competition is healthy. It's great that there's so many distilleries open. There are going to be questions about, are there enough levels of expertise to go across all the distilleries? I think there's 31 now, and every other week I get an email and inquiry about a distillery. So, the number could be well over 60, going by our count. There's another 15 to 16 officially planned.
Yeah.
And then probably another 25 to 30 that we hear of.
On paper.
Yeah, absolutely on paper.
Very
and then God knows how many are in people's heads or
That's true.
sitting in a glass somewhere, so.
Yeah. So Paul wrote here, I assume the lack of orders will cause some of the distilleries to scramble for cash.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of competition, and I think a lot of reality is going to kick in now as well. So, charging $6-7 grand for a barrel of whiskey, somebody needs to see common sense and actually say, okay, well, look, these are the times we're in. The realistic price is going to be such and such. So there's going to be healthy competition, and that'll only bring out the best. So let's see what happens.
I know I can buy 3 casks of new make from almost any distillery in Scotland for 1 cask at the moment in Ireland.
Yeah, and that is
unbelievable.
Yeah, but there are different factors for that. Okay, so one of them is the fact that these are startup companies. They don't have the volume, the resources are more limited. They're trying to recoup what they've invested so far. There's less competition. There's a smaller market overall. A lot of the Scottish they can quite happily produce and go into big blends like the Johnny Walkers and the Shivas and all that. That market isn't developed here yet. We also haven't developed a strong tourism plan yet to guarantee income. But the competition will be healthy. The price is reflective of their costs. Okay, so the cost of doing business in Ireland for these companies is expensive. Taxes are extremely high compared to
we don't pay taxes on a cask at the beginning. There are no taxes.
Well,
there are no excise. There is no VAT. I'm just paying to the distillery the entire amount of money.
Yeah, but I mean, there's the cost of building the warehouse, the cost of warehouse.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I wouldn't say it's 3 times the price. I mean, I know you can get, but I'm certain this. You can get better value for money abroad.
So before we move on to Gokul's question, let's go to Jeff. He said, related to the turn down in tourism due to COVID-19, do you have any thoughts on how the PHA will affect the new distilleries? Could you help me with what PHA is?
Well, who is saying that?
That is Jeff Adams. Jeff, could you please write down what PHA means? I don't know. All right, very good. Then let's move to the next question. We'll come back to that for a second. Gokul, that's a friend of mine over here in Germany. He says, in my opinion, we'll see that some big companies will buy some of the distilleries. Yay.
Well, look, there's no doubt. It's like a craft brewer starting up his own beer manufacturer.
They have departments for that.
Yeah, I mean, there is a business plan for some of these companies to be bought out.
M&A.
That's their exit strategy, and it's their entry strategy in a lot of cases. We're not big fans of that. To be quite blunt, but yeah, I mean, as a business venture alone, it's a viable option. It's certainly a way that you've seen the beer industry develop. So I don't see it being very different in the whiskey side. There will be some. I'm glad to say it's not too prevalent, but I would say that 2 or 3, especially with what's happened, may have no choice. Very, very good.
So, as I was mentioning, some of the big companies, Suntory, Diageo, Pernod Ricard, they actually have entire departments just for mergers and acquisitions.
Of
And they're
course,
going
yeah.
out there and they're looking for these startups that have created a brand, that have a following, and they're offering them their 20, 30, 50 million and say, here, sell out and we'll buy this and make it bigger and open up distribution. And some companies, let's take a look at Glendalough. They sold out to the Canadian company. So
Yeah.
that's also a very interesting situation there, yeah?
Well, I mean, that was expected. Sorry, from my point of view, anyway. I mean, I saw the writing on the wall there from day one. And there are a few companies that I wouldn't care to mention, but that is their model. There are some companies there who want to build a business based on a brand, solely on a brand. And again, these things work in the short term. And for some companies, they will be the low hanging fruit that some of the bigger distilleries can pick on. But I think I'm glad to say that the majority are in for the long haul. Some of the newer ones now that are starting, I think I'm worried they might be a bit too late into the game.
Yeah.
We're riding on a quest now of 20 years continuous growth, but from a base of almost nothing. So we're still, 1 or 2% in the world. If you look at Asia, we're nothing. We're not even a blip. We're starting to be. If you look at Russia, we're starting to be. But there's huge potential, and I do believe that Irish whiskey has yet to see its best days. Don't know whether we'll reach being the heyday of what we were, but I mean, all we can do is be the best we can. And I think if we stick to being authentic and being real, that we have a very good chance of delivering that. But we need to be fresh as well. We need to be innovative.
Yeah. Jeff Adams just wrote Ireland's public health alcohol bill, PHA, limiting advertising signage to get to distilleries. I'm out of this. I don't know. So the ball is in your court now, sir.
No. I mean, it's a huge obstacle, and the legislation is still not that clear on a lot of matters there. There are exclusions for certain things. So this is basically saying that there's no advertising for alcohol. It can't be placed in view of schools and so on, and that's of course everybody understands that, and everybody is concerned that alcohol, when consumed correctly, is a great gift, and when abused, is destroys lives.
Yeah.
So there's no denying that. But the Irish whiskey business and sector have been very responsible, and I think the measures that they've had to endure have been over the top. For example, not being able to place a sign advertising where your distillery is. I
did not know that. That's totally new information for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's loop around getting around that sort of things. But so I don't know if it's been fully ratified yet with Europe, the law. So there are still things to come in. But even in terms of advertising, you have to be careful where you advertise. For us, we're not too badly affected because we are a specialist whiskey magazine, but other publications have the limit of, for every single alcohol ad they have to place 4 or 5 other non-alcohol related ads. And if that was to play into our hands, that would mean that I'd be advertising, hotels and cars and God knows what else, and perfumes. If that was okay, so from that. All that is pretty harsh. That definitely needs to be looked at. It's been a very poorly thought out bill. Nobody's denying that measures need to be in place to protect those that are vulnerable, but the measures that have been taken have been ill thought out at best.
Yeah, very good. So Greg here from Paris mentions, I'm sure, René, that very clearly bought French DGH. I don't know distillery. They also bought Westland. They bought Bruichladdich. They will someday buy also craft distillery at some point. Could be, right?
Absolutely, and there are some that I know.
Yeah.
They're not sticking a for sale outside the window, but there are indicators that there are some for sale.
All right, very, very good. Now, let's talk about, you mentioned, or I think I mentioned, the Celtic Whiskey Shop was one of the best places where we can actually buy Irish whiskey, but there's a new competitor on the scene called Irish Malts as well. So there's finally 2 big boys that sell and send Irish whiskey worldwide. Wow, that's great for me.
No, I mean, and it is great. The biggest obstacle, I suppose, to getting whiskey outside of Ireland is the cost of delivery. And Irish malts are new. I know the guys are based down in Cork, and they've come up with a new. So they're disruptors in the market, and we love disruptors in the market. But that's not to take away from what Celtic have done, because Celtic have been at the centre of very much the resurgence of what Irish whiskey is. Before Irish whiskey was popular, they were there from day one. So Ali and his team have done a fantastic job. And there are others. There's Al Mulligans. There's Foxes. There's the bars. There's the carryouts. There's ones up north as well. So I don't want to say that one is any better than the other. But what the Irish malts have done is certainly very interesting in terms of their delivery model. And I like the fact that they have these kiosks now that you can go into a distillery and leverage their capabilities in the distillery to get bottles delivered to your homelands. That's a very nice touch. Yeah.
All right, very good. So I think Irish Malts was the first time I bought something from them that was a single cask from Dingle. One of the people had one of those founding father casks, and it's like, I don't know what to do with my 280 bottles. These Irish malt those bottles that way. And they were actually sold out within hours, if not even quicker. It was very, very interesting and very, very well done.
Yeah, it is interesting. It is a fresh model, and the guys are good guys, and they've managed to get incredible shipping rates. Their website is good and clean. They don't have the variety that some of the others do, so you'll find it a bit more difficult to get the niche. But what they do have, and they are getting some exclusives that you can't get elsewhere actually themselves. So yeah, it's interesting. And then you also have the auction sites, which is becoming another. So you've got Celtic whiskey auctions and Irish whiskey auctions.
It cost me 45 euros to send one bottle to Germany without even paying the price for the bottle. That was just unbelievable.
Yeah. I sympathise with you. You. When I was living abroad and I was ordering auctions. It was costing me a lot, and ironically enough, I was in England, or I was up north actually, and I was ordering whiskey from Scottish auction sites, and it was still costing me a lot.
They're much cheaper for me, so I buy all my Irish whiskey on auction sites from Scotland, unfortunately, rather than Ireland, just to the postage.
Yeah, so the postage is a big problem, and for us.
Yeah. So can you say maybe a word about the great job some indie bottlers have done to show Irish whiskey? We have Blackadder, you have Cadenheads, we have also that Boutique Whiskey Company and the
Scotch Malt Whisky Society as well.
SMWS, exactly, very good.
Yeah, there's a lot of boutique. Look, these are independent bottlers that are based abroad that source Irish whiskey, and they do a great job on bringing a particular niche style. A particular branding that might suit a new market that would be far more difficult for an Irish-based company to reach. So, and there are many of them. You look at, let's say, independent bottle Tipperary. They have reached a niche in the US and in Europe. You look at Clonakilty. They've reached, although they're not independent bottles, they've reached a particular niche in Germany and parts of Florida. Or
Washington and New York and New England as well, yes.
Yeah, you look at Kinahan's. They've made incredible inroads into Asia, and they've made inroads through contacts that they have that Irish companies find very difficult to leverage, even the big brands. And then you have the historical companies, like the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, like Cadenheads, like Le Boutique, that have produced some. And managed to secure some fantastic whiskey and done a great job with them. The Whiskey Exchange as well,
Very good. So yesterday I talked with Brandon here from up Northern Ireland in his own little tiny, I'm going to call it micro distillery.
Yes, we've been there.
And he mentioned, I asked him if you could change one thing, it would be the geographic indicator for pot still Irish whiskey. He says that's a terrible, terrible thing that had to be changed. I talked with John Teeling the day before that. He said, Jason, one of my mistakes I made was I didn't think anyone wanted to drink pot still whiskey.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. Look, there's a lot made of pot still whiskey, and it's great. Pot still whiskey, and it's touted as a synonymous Irish whiskey. Brendan makes some good points. So So I think one of Brendan's points was that he would change the GI. In fact, we've done I don't know if you read the previous issue. Brian Green, who's the president of the Irish Whiskey Society, did a lot of research and probably has done the most in-depth research on the GI and the technical file. And the GI itself doesn't have to change now. So it's not the GI. The GI can stay the same. What needs to change is the technical file that the GI refers to.
You're right. I'm sorry. My mistake.
Right.
Yes.
So I think Brendan may have said that. I can't remember. But yes, look, there's an argument that the technical file needs to change. And that argument is that it's not accurate historically. And there's been a lot of research done by a lot of people. John O'Connor, Charlie Roach, a few other people would have done a lot of research into finding other mash bills that were considered pot still in the heyday and are not conforming to the pot still definition now. Yeah. So does it really matter is the other question. So you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere, I suppose, and say, okay, we want to try and preserve our quality. And that is one of the biggest criteria. But I mean, the market will decide what is good and what is not.
Okay.
Right? This is not a free for all for the distilleries to decide what is and what isn't appreciated. Irish whiskey isn't at the point where they're all the same. Not all Irish whiskey is the same. We've got so many different varieties. And it's underrated the quality of the single malts that we produce. We produce single malts that are the best in the world. And you can see that through awards that have been achieved, mainly by Teeling, and then you've got Bushmills.
24-year-old, I think, then that was Cooley Juice, but yes.
Yeah. So Cooley, O'Connell, Bushmills, you've got some fantastic single malts that aren't triple distilled. Some of them are double distilled. But then we do also have some fantastic pot still whiskey, and some people prefer pot still to single malt. Pot still is, it does have its own geographic indicator and protection. Mm-hmm. And if it's going to use a yardstick, let's use an accurate one. Yeah. That's, there is the argument I can bring out a whiskey tomorrow with 90% oat. Well, I'm not saying with 70% oats and still call it Irish whiskey. Is Irish whiskey enough to differentiate itself in the marketplace? So this is a lot about how do you differentiate Irish whiskey in the marketplace? And I still think Irish whiskey has yet to find its definitive identity, because what we have out there at the moment is we have Jameson and we have Irish whiskey. And Jameson has spearheaded and been the reason why we still have any Irish whiskey at all. And let's be honest. We'll give
very there. True that they actually got together and they decided to go to Middleton 1972 was a great strategic decision.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, they monopoly. Yeah, they wrote the Irish whiskey history book for almost 30 some years.
Well, they wrote it, and in some cases they defined it themselves anyway. So. It's a double-edged sword, It's very easy, as I mentioned to you yesterday, to be critical of any large business. The fact is, we should be all grateful that Jameson exists. Jameson is a fantastic product in the area that it serves. I dread to think, what would happen if we had the likes of some other company other than IDL being the major player in the market. They have been. And of course, look, nobody's going to hide. IDL are by far the biggest player. They're the most significant player. They have put in a lot of innovation to assist new distilleries. And this doesn't mean say, oh, nice boy, sit in your chair and be good. They've encouraged innovation in those others. They've taken them and given guidelines. They haven't said this isn't possible. And I really don't believe they've abused. The questionable area is, and again, it's not an abuse, it's the technical file is where there is scope for improvement. no doubt.
Could you kind of just tell us again what a technical file is? Because Kevin's asking, is it product specification? What exactly is this technical file?
Okay, so the technical file basically is what is Irish whiskey, what defines Irish whiskey. So it covers things like mash bills, the percentage of certain grains, the alcohol levels that can be achieved, how old it must be matured for, and so forth. So, what kind of casks. And actually our technical file, we give out about it, right? And I give out about it, because there's always scope for improvement.
Yeah.
It actually, brings me to tears almost, the fact that, the best pot stills in the world aren't necessarily Irish anymore. We are in danger of some American companies, some other whiskey producers coming up with more innovative and more varied varieties of mash bills that lead to better or maybe not better whiskey. Like I said, the market will decide.
Okay.
There's no point in being different just for the sake of being different. Innovation is great, but innovation, there has to be a byproduct of that, and hopefully something that is a benefit in some way. Whether it's cheaper, whether it's better value for money, whether it's more flavorsome, whether it's better for a cocktail, whether it's a deeper, more characterful. But innovation is no use for innovation's sake.
Now, Greg was complaining a moment ago about all these red wine cask finishes. He hide those weak distillate. Now, I've complained dozens of times about coulis juice being distilled or being hid behind a finish, which often is needed because of those weak casks that were used back then. What would you expect, or what would you like to see more in the future, especially from those new distilleries on innovation, on experimentation, and so on?
Look, the way it's been up to now, and where we're going to see the big change in the future is not just in casks. So we're starting to see casks from, tequila, mezcal, cognac, brandy.
The battalion, yes.
Yeah. Everything, Vinsanto, all the rest. And that's great. And the reason that you're seeing that variety is because, one, we do have the scope for varying our wood. So we don't have to have just oak, and we don't necessarily just have to have, old bourbon barrels, which is great. But what we need now is, the reason that is there is basically there is no other way to differentiate at the moment. When your supply chain is limited to 2 or 3 suppliers of where you get your spirit from, the only way to differentiate yourself is by finishing or maturation. Right? Now, what is going to happen in the future as these distilleries come online, and you're starting to see it, will be the way they produce their mash bill. Or it could be the way they actually, their source of the water, or where they mature. So it could be sea influence. It could be how they actually add water to their product to bring it down, to cut the whiskey. Where they take their cuts. So distillation, everybody says 70% of the flavor comes from the wood, and I'm not going to argue with that, whether it's 20 or whether it's 90. I don't really want to get into that discussion because it's. But wood is a huge factor.
Yeah.
But once you go beyond the wood, what is it? It's the mash bill. It's the source of the ingredients. It's where you're matured. It's maybe how you store your wood. Is there a rotation? So many different factors. So I don't think the wood. I don't think you will eventually exhaust the source of casks. We'll be finishing whiskey in. I don't know, fish casks before long if we're not careful.
I have something here that's a little bit interesting because it has to do with the Atlantic Kumba Seaweed Cask. What is your opinion of this somewhat unusual product?
Look, I know the guys and I know the team that are behind it. What they do is they produce a phenomenal, and they actually produce a phenomenal Calac vodka that I'm a huge fan of. It was, it really opened up my eyes to what they can do. They're not going to release something that they don't have. I believe it's going to be a seriously good product. I've tried it. It's a very innovative product. And the taste is very different to what you would expect. I like it. Whether it would be my daily, whiskey. I would like to try it occasionally, but I mean, I give a lot of kudos for what they've done. It is a
Okay.
world first, and it works.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep. So I'm going to actually have the guys on my show probably next week or so, and so I'll talk to them about this. Just came today from Irish Malts, by the way. Now, a second
Yes.
bottle that actually just arrived was here, which I also saw at the Irish Whiskey Fair, was the Liberator. What do you think about these guys here? The inaugural release here.
Look, I mean, again, I've got, I think it's Morris O'Connell is behind that, Wayward Spirits.
Yep.
And yeah, we received 3 samples. I haven't got to taste them all. I think I got to try the Liberator one. And yeah, look, I was impressed by it.
Great port finish, right?
Yeah, and you're starting to see port appear again. And at one point, port was actually more popular than sherry as a finishing cask.
Is that for all whiskey or just Irish whiskey?
In Irish in particular. I can't speak for Scotch because I'd be, but I mean, it certainly was used in Scotch as well. But the port finish is interesting. And I don't know if it's interesting because I've had so much sherry, or it's interesting in itself. But I certainly like the addition of that now and the resurgence of what we're seeing in port. I think it's a good, solid whiskey. I don't know where the brand are going long term, but as a single product, I really enjoyed it. I'd like to try everything at higher strength, of course. But yeah, but look, I like the bottle actually as well, and the presentation is very interesting.
That is true. That is very, very unique. A little bit gin almost is how I feel about this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's certainly different, a new branding and a fresh look. And look, of course, it's a sourced whiskey, and as so many will be. But the importance of independent bottlers cannot be under or over exaggerated. It's important. They each have their niche and they each reach certain things. What people need to know, what we're big advocates, is that there is transparency that the liquid was sourced.
All right. Let's talk about St. Patrick's, for example, Irish whiskey, where it said distillery, and they were actually forced to take that word distillery off of their labeling because they didn't have a distillery, nor do they want to have a distillery. Isn't it a big problem in Irish whiskey? Transparency?
Transparency. It wasn't, well, it is and it isn't. There are certain brands certainly out there that have surfed very close to the edge on what is accurate. But the thing is, they get caught out now.
Okay.
We have a huge whiskey fan base that are extremely knowledgeable and will pull anybody immediately on what they've done wrong. Now, whether they should be pulled in public or not is a different matter. Maybe yes, maybe no. There are lives at stake here. But I certainly think in the case of St. Patrick's, people were very slow to act on that.
Yep.
There are other ones that have been seen out there as well that people were slow to act on. The market will decide. The consumer. The consumer has the power. It's not the IWA. It's not the government. The consumer will pull these people up and say, "Look, this is not right." What the IWA or what the government can do is make it mandatory.
And it's not. Should it be made mandatory? Yeah. Should we have sourced whiskey? It doesn't have to say bottled by, but it doesn't have to say Cooley or Bushmills or whatever. No,
and I can understand and I respect that. I wouldn't go that far as to say who it's sourced from. I mean, the diehards would say yes. I'm looking at it from if I'm producing my own whiskey and I want to protect my reputation, I can understand why I wouldn't.
Well, Great Northern's whole concept is a consignment distillery. They don't want to produce anything themselves. They just want to produce for others. So
and they make no excuses for that. And why should they? What they do is they're providing independent bottlers with an option of producing, or actually they're even providing existing distilleries that have no revenue income with a chance of providing revenue. Yes, they're producing relatively young liquid, but that's
4
not
years old
necessarily a bad
now,
thing.
so that's not
Yeah,
bad. Some are
you
even
know,
5. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean they have access to older stock as well. So,
Hmm.
and I've been down there. I've seen the operation. It's very impressive. I think it's required. So there are companies who set up as a distillery and they have no other revenue stream other than being able to source through John Teeling. So what he's done is amazing.
Hmm.
He's not the only one out there doing it, but he's one of the biggest producers.
I think he is the biggest one doing it.
Yeah, I mean, look, West Cork are not a million miles behind either in terms of
That's
size.
true, but they're supermarket brands more than anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, but look, there is space for a supermarket brand as well. So,
Yeah.
um,
John O'Connell, I should have next week as well on my stream, so I'm going to talk to him about that as well because I think his concept is great of what he did, and I think the direction he's going is also very, very interesting. And he
look, I
bought
think,
back his own company. Congratulations on that.
yeah, look, you've obviously had more success in reaching John than we have because
Oh, okay.
he's
He is a difficult guy to.
I think it's a story that people look to find out more about. So, yeah, you got me on that one. In fairness, we have been trying to get John for a while, but look, I understand they're very focused on what they're doing, and that's great. But we have readers who would love to find out more.
Yeah.
And there are other companies that that will produce for third-party bottlers. There's no doubt about it. But the independent bottler is required. It's needed to reach markets where one company may not be able to reach.
Okay.
And again, I'll cite different brands like JJ Corey, Kinahan's.
Louise will be next week as well on I think Tuesday evening.
Well, that should be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. I love Louise.
Yeah.
So, very good. Greg asked the question here: is there any chance to see the comeback of Connemara Cask Strength, the whiskey that converted me personally to peated whiskeys? What do you think? Will Suntory do it?
I don't know if Suntory will, but somebody else will, and that's
Okay.
without a doubt. Yeah, there will be peated whiskies coming out.
Oh, there are already. I mean, Hinch is peated.
Yeah, I mean there are some
as well, but who cares?
But I think once we manage to convince the maltsters, that they can actually peat the cereal, then I think we'll be in even better shape.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is sourced from Scotland. There are some very small craft, like Irish craft malts being one of them that do peated malts, oats and other cereals and barley, of course. We will see the resurgence and the return of peated Irish whiskey.
Okay.
And it's not something new. It's just something that disappeared for a while.
Yeah. All right. Very good. So, John Teeling said basically Irish whiskey is for him always usually a blended whiskey. That's why he makes grain. Middleton, very rare, blended whiskey. Now, what's your opinion of Irish and blended whiskeys?
My opinion, I mean, you have this discussion with Scotch whiskey as well, don't you? So, and you have it worldwide. So blended, I mean, you can have different malts from different distilleries and put them together, and it's a blend, right?
Yep.
So, if it's something that leads to more variety and the quality does not diminish, then why not? We need a better priced. Yeah, we're talking about whiskeys becoming more premiumized.
Right.
So we are seeing the whiskeys, I suppose, above the €70 mark.
Yes.
But we can also get some incredibly expensive and brilliant blended whiskeys, and Middleton very rare being one of them. As far as I'm concerned, you can end up sometimes with a better product by blending. Okay. So I've no issue with it. I think grain whiskey in itself, I've tasted some fantastic grain whiskeys. For Cullen 10-year-old, the Teeling grain, they're just a Method and Madness single grain. There's some fantastic single grain whiskies out there, and it's a category in itself. It's more approachable. I think it's probably a great whiskey for some cocktails as well. But it's a neat. It's a very interesting whiskey, and it doesn't have to be boring and flat and thought of as just one-dimensional. I don't believe that at all, actually. And again, look, the customer will decide. Give the customer the option, and they can determine what they want.
Now, one of my last questions, we're going to have to end in about 5 minutes because I said I have another stream soon. I was criticized for criticizing Irish whiskey. I had a few different bottles that I just did not like, and as a reviewer, I tell it as I see it. I'm very authentic. I'll praise something that is good, and I say, go buy it, and I'll warn people, don't buy this is crap. My personal opinion. Now, what's your strategy of dealing with bottles that are, in your opinion, subpar? Are you a whiskey evangelist for Irish whiskey, or do you also sometimes call them out?
Look, we would lose complete credibility if everything that came across our desk was a good Irish whiskey. It doesn't make sense. And I'm not an advocate for pushing Irish products, whatever they are. Whether it's my magazine, whether it's any product, sweets, crisps, whatever. It doesn't matter. Putting Irish on it does not. Putting Irish on it is a responsibility. It is a chance to showcase brand Ireland, but you must do it in a respectful way and in produce something that is good. But it's not always going to work. You can take risks. Again, my biggest fear is, the whole category of Irish whiskey losing the run of itself, losing a sense of identity, and coming up with paddywhackery and coming up with crazy products just for the sake of coming up with something different. The essence of what has to be done is quality. And people talk about, look, there's this craft distillery movement, which is great. But I mean, these giants of the industry, less giants, medium stuff, they have built their base not by producing crap. And the market has determined that their product is good. So I think we just need to be careful that we see innovation in the right sense. Yes, there are corrections that need to be made to the technical file. The market will see to that happens, and the market can't stick its head in the sand either. So we need to be careful.
All right, very, very good. So we've had the privilege here of whoops, that was not the right link. I wanted to put the link back here at your magazine. When will the next issue be released? It was just released, wasn't it?
So we just released issue 9 in March. Our next issue is due in June. We will be on time in June to deliver. We obviously have the challenges of being able to get out there.
Yep.
And as long as our printers are printing and our posting, we will be out in June. I mean, if this continues on much longer, obviously we're going to have challenges for the September issue. We still think we have a large catalog, but we have fantastic readers, fantastic friends in the community who are always willing to help. And this is a magazine for the fan, the Irish whiskey fans. So I'm somebody that is interested in Ireland, so it might not be necessarily the liquid. It could be the craft making that goes into making cask. It could be the food pairing. It could be the cocktail making. Irish whiskey is not just about the liquid. If it was just about the liquid, it would be, not an interesting story. I mean, Coca-Cola sell sugared water, but you're not just buying sugared water, are you, when you buy Coke? But Irish whiskey is 100 times more interesting. So,
amen to that. Let's go.
Yes,
That's
let's
very,
hope
very
so.
good. I totally agree. Yeah. Very, very good.
Look,
what a privilege.
No, for us as well. Look, we've spoken before, obviously, and you've seen our magazine. And, we hope you enjoy it and hope to continue enjoying it. But what we're going to do is try and do the sector proud and deliver what is accurate.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. We also, every time there's also the new releases in there with a nice little write-up about that, and you have a lot of in-depth information. Last time was cognac. You had Powers Court in there, and you also had one other big topic, which I forgot. I'm sorry.
I'd have to check. There are lots of big topics, but yeah, I mean, we have some
harvesting history was the thing. You talked a lot about the barley and the grains.
The historic grains, yeah. I mean, that's a fantastic piece, yeah, by Will Keating. And look, we've got Fionn, we've got Eric, we've got really passionate people, and that's the most exciting thing for me. You know, it inspires me when I'm seeing our writers that are so excited about what they're doing. It's an honor for me to be able to give them an outlet to be able to actually share with the rest of the world what Irish whiskey really is. Because without them, without our graphic designers, we're nothing. And without our readers who give us great feedback, and great feedback can be negative. You know, we love that too.
Constructive criticism, go for it. Yes.
Yeah. We learn lots by that way.
I'm sure we both have, or we all have. Very, very good. So usually it's 112 pages, your magazine, which is actually a lot to read if you have the time to go through all the different articles. All right.
Yeah. Look, thank you very much. It was nice talking to you.
It was a privilege talking to you. Thank you very much. So WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany. Today I had the privilege of talking to the what is your title there with the Irish Whiskey Magazine?
Oh, good God, a gopher.
Gopher, yes. You're not the editor. You're not the editor-in-chief in charge. You're the gopher. That's good.
I'm the bit that glues everybody's talent together. That's what I like to think. So thank you very much. Sláinte.
Sláinte. All the best.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.